The sun dipped low behind the red cliffs, painting the desert gold and fire. Dust swirled in the road. The wagon creaked, slowed. A woman stepped into the path, revolver raised. Her hands were steady, but her eyes were sharp, wild. Elias Thorne blinked against the sun. He lifted both hands slowly, deliberately. Palms open. He did not shout. He did not curse. He only studied her, calm in a way that made her grip the gun tighter. "Step down," she said, voice low, scraping against her throat. "I don't want to shoot, but I will if I must." He nodded. One careful step after another, he slid from the wagon seat, boots crunching on gravel, hands raised. He said nothing more. She studied him, face sun-darkened, eyes steady, hands not trembling. He asked her name. She spat words clipped and sharp. "Julieta James." Elias repeated it. "Julieta James," he said, as if that mattered. Then he paused. "If you're going to take my wagon, you might as well take my last name too." The words struck her like a bullet she had not expected. She spun, gun trained on his chest. "What does that mean?" Quote. He stepped closer. "It means you don't want to rob me. You want help, and I'm offering it." Her knees buckled. The revolver slipped. She fell to the ground, hitting hard. He was there in an instant, catching her before her face struck the dirt. "I can manage myself," she whispered. "You've been hungry," he said. "I can tell." "I don't need your help." "You do. You're shaking. You've gone 2 days without food." Her eyes filled, but she said nothing. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders. His touch was firm, protective, steady. He asked again, "Are you alone?" "Yes," she muttered. He helped her up onto the wagon bench, handed her a tin cup of water. Sun slipping behind the cliffs, the air cooled fast. "Safe now," he said. "No one will harm you here." She sipped, shivering. "Why not take me to the sheriff? You belong somewhere safe, not locked behind bars." The wagon moved east as the light faded. The wind carried the smell of sage and dry earth. She leaned forward, eyes scanning the road, every muscle tight. He guided the horse, silent, steady, letting her breathe but never letting her fall. That night, the fire crackled. Beans and bacon sizzling in a tin pot. She woke to the smell and the sound, the warmth, the quiet. He sat across from it, stirring, watching. "You're safe," he said. She whispered the story she could barely admit aloud. 2 children, a girl and a boy. 7 and 5. Dila and Drew. Left behind in Prescott with a woman she trusted. When she returned, they were gone. Sold into labor. Elias placed a plate of food in her hands. "We will get them back," he said. "I have wagons, horses, and friends across the territory. We will find your children." She stared. "Why help me?" "Because you tried to take what was mine instead of begging. That shows grit." "You're either the kindest man or the dumbest," she muttered. "Maybe both," he said. Days passed under pale blue skies. Creeks and cottonwoods passed by. He never pressured her. He offered steadiness, a place to breathe, a chance to plan. She caught him watching her once by the fire. He said only, "I'm glad you're here." Quote. By the 6th day, a town appeared. Trading post. A boy said 2 children matching her description had been sold weeks before to a rancher outside town. Julieta gripped the wagon's edge, hands shaking. Elias said nothing more. They rode hard, sun climbing, dust and wind in their faces, hearts thudding. The ranch appeared in a shallow valley, fences crooked, house low and tired. A tall man stepped out, hands wiping trousers. Elias dismounted, stance calm, firm. Julieta followed, legs unsteady. "We're looking for 2 children," she said, voice trembling. "A girl named Dila and a boy named Drew." The rancher frowned. "Bought a pair like that. Quiet children, good workers." Julieta felt the world tilt. Elias stepped slightly in front of her. "We will pay double what you gave. They are hers. We are taking them back." The man's eyes moved from Elias to Julieta, noting the white-knuckled grip on his sleeve, the trembling hands. After a long pause, he waved them to the shed. He had not wanted them anyway. Julieta ran inside. There, crouched in hay, were the children. Smaller, thinner, eyes wide with fear. She whispered Della's name. The girl rose slowly. "Mama," she said. Julieta collapsed into their arms, tears soaking hair and dust-streaked cheeks. Drew clung to her lap. Elias stood back, giving space, keeping watch. That night, children asleep, fire crackling, she told him he had meant what he said. He told her he only said things he meant. "You're kinder than I deserve," she said. "You deserve more than you've had," he said, "and if you let me, I'll give it." Her breath caught. He reminded her of the last thing she forgot when she tried to rob him. She already knew the answer, his last name. He said it again, steady, deliberate. She smiled through tears. She would stay, and he would stay. Next morning, cold and quiet, he poured coffee while the children slept. She watched, hair loose, face soft. They broke camp slowly. Children helping where they could. They rode toward a homestead near Sanita. Roof needing fixing, well clean. It would be theirs. Julieta asked if he trusted her. "I do. You've done everything hard. Without help. You know how to last." Hand in hand, wagon moving slow, children safe. She looked out at the red mesas turning gold. She whispered, "We'll make it last." The land stretched wide. Wind carried the scent of sage. Fireflies blinked in the distance. She felt for the first time in years that home could be more than shelter. It could be everything. Morning broke pale and cold over the low hills. The wagon rolled slow, dust rising in soft clouds behind the horse. Julieta's hands rested on the edge of the seat, fingers brushing the wood, feeling the rhythm of the road. Della sat close, head resting on her mother's arm. Drew clutched a small cedar whistle Elias had carved, teeth biting the edges. Elias guided the horse, reins loose in one hand, the other hand resting easy at his side. He did not speak at first. He let the silence stretch, letting them breathe into it. The land rolled out wide, scrub grass and twisted mesquite. Birds scattered as they moved. Julieta spoke at last, quiet. "Where are we going first?" "To a homestead." "Empty." "Needs work. Water's clean." "Safe," he said. "If we start there, you can breathe. Then we can plan." She nodded, eyes forward. "I have never had a home like that." "You have one now," he said, his voice firm, but gentle. The children watched the road, wide eyes taking in the land. Drew asked a question about a distant ridge. Elias explained what grew there, what animals passed, what water ran. Julieta listened, learning, memorizing. By midday, they stopped at a dry creek bed. Elias set the horse to graze. Julieta pulled the canvas flap to shade the children, tied it with twine. Dilla arranged stones in neat lines. Drew scattered pine cones. Elias set up a small fire, coals catching with quiet patience. "Can I make biscuits?" Juliet asked. "Of course," he said. He handed her the tin of lard. Worthy cause. Della brightened. "Mama makes the best ones." Drew watched Elias carefully, trying not to spill the water he carried. Elias caught his eye once, nodded, then returned to stacking kindling. The dough rose warm and soft in Julieta's hands. Children chewed jerky, eyes bright with curiosity. The smell of baking filled the air. Sun dropped, red and gold, shadows long across the wash. "That land," Julieta said quietly, "it feels empty, but not in a bad way. Just waiting. Waiting for someone to care," Elias said. "For hands like yours, steady and careful." She looked up at him, eyebrows raised, but said nothing. The words hung, unspoken truths moving between them. They camped under a twisted ironwood tree, roots gripping the bank like stubborn hands. Elias built the fire low, careful. Julieta knelt by the Dutch oven, rolling dough with a bottle. The children stayed close, watching, learning. Drew's small hands pulled pine cones apart. Dila observed, serious. "Have you been this far south before?" she asked. "Not often," he said, "enough to know the land." "People say nothing grows here," she said. "Depends on what you plant and how you care," he said, "and sometimes what you rebuild after failing." The biscuits came golden. Drew clapped. Della smiled, proud. Julieta allowed herself to imagine a life that felt solid, a place that would not break under the weight of fear. Elias pointed out where the homestead would sit, where walls could be braced, garden planted, chickens kept. She asked about doors and latches, teaching the children to reach in safely. He promised them, and they would make it so. Evening fell slow, red turning to violet. They ate together. Laughter came from the children, light and clear. For the first time, Julieta allowed herself to feel steady. The land changed as they traveled. Red stone giving way to wide grassland, old fences half buried, mesquite stubborn as hope. She shaded the children under canvas, Drew playing quietly, Della close at her side. Elias guided the horse, pointing out creeks and dry gullies, explaining what the land needed, what failed. He taught her to notice small things, where the soil held water, where animals grazed, how to find safe paths. Night fell, stars sharp and clear. Elias slept outside the wagon, keeping watch. Julieta lay with the children near the fire, listening to the wind move through the desert grass, no longer threatening. Morning came with work. She stirred dough, cooked simple meals. Elias braced walls, measured twice before nailing, teaching her how to hold wood steady. Children helped where they could. She marveled at how the land responded to care, how the homestead rose slowly from dust and wind. Ruth, a widow nearby, brought eggs. Words of kindness that settled heavy fear in their hearts. The children warmed to her immediately. Dila focused on lessons. Drew ran errands with Elias, learning the weight of tools, the patience of effort. Evenings passed slow. Firelight, conversations about walls, gardens, chickens, and harvest. Elias and Julieta began sharing small smiles, careful touches, moments of quiet connection. Trust grew with every meal, every repaired board, every seed pressed into the soil. The homestead became a place of work and comfort. The barn held, the roof stood, water flowed, windows captured light. She learned to trade preserves for tools, cloth, nails, and seeds. The children grew, laughter and chatter filling the small space. Storms came, testing the roof. Cold nights pressed at them. Still, they faced each day steady, unafraid. Elias and Julieta learned the rhythm of land and family, each day building something lasting. One evening, she asked about the past, the wagon, the first meeting, the words he had spoken. He reminded her of the last name, the moment that started it all, and she smiled, quiet, remembering how a name had changed everything. Together, they planned for the homestead, gardens, fences, a smokehouse. Each board, each seed, each meal laid a foundation for something stronger than fear. The sun fell behind distant hills. Fireflies blinked. Children laughed and played. Elias and Julieta sat side by side on the porch, watching, hands intertwined, knowing that the life they were building could hold, could last, could grow steady and strong. Night settled over them, lanterns dimmed. The wind moved gentle through grass and sage. Inside, everything held. The children slept safe. The home stood rooted. And for the first time in years, Julieta felt she could stay, that the world outside could no longer touch what they had built together. The morning air smelled of dust and wet earth. Sunlight cut through the trees as Elias and Julieta climbed onto the wagon. The children stirred quietly, Dila rubbing her eyes, Drew tugging at the reins to test the horse. Elias checked the harness, hands steady, slow, careful. The land stretched before them wide and empty, a canvas waiting for their steps. "Where now?" Julieta asked, voice low, still hoarse from yesterday's work. To town, Elias said. We need supplies and information. She frowned. Information about what? Your children, he said simply. The words landed without flourish. No excuses, no hesitation. Her heart hit her chest. She swallowed hard and nodded. They rode through winding paths of scrub and low brush. The horse lifted its hooves carefully over dry gullies. Elias guided the wagon, pointing out water sources and patches of wild grass. Della peeked over the side, whispering questions about birds and lizards. Elias answered each patiently, teaching her children to notice what mattered. By mid-morning, the town of Prescott rose like a small cluster of buildings crouched against a hill. Smoke curled from chimneys, the smell of baking bread drifting from the bakery. Streets were narrow, dusty, and silent enough that their wheels seemed to echo. Elias slowed, scanning for familiar faces. Julieta tightened her grip on the reins. Do you think they'll remember me? They will, he said. Or they'll remember what they heard. Either way, we'll find them. The trading post stood near the center, its wooden sign swaying. Elias dismounted first, stepping quietly. Julieta followed, the children close, their small hands holding pieces of rope and cloth for comfort. They entered the shop. The bell jingled, a sharp sound that made Julieta's stomach twist. A young boy looked up, eyes wide. Can I help you? He asked. Yes, Julieta said quickly. We're looking for a boy and girl, Della and Drew James. They were sold weeks ago to someone outside of town. Do you know where? Quote. The boy's gaze shifted nervously. They went to a ranch south, near the canyon, not far. Her chest lifted, then fell. Thank you, she whispered. She looked at Elias. Do we have enough to pay? Elias met her eyes. We'll pay what we must. More if needed. The wagon rolled south, the sun climbing higher, hot against their backs. Dust curled in the wind, low and persistent. Della pressed against Julieta, whispering questions. Drew asked why the sky looked so wide. Elias answered carefully, showing them the hills, the low valleys, the distant water. He never flinched, never hesitated. By late afternoon, the ranch came into view. A low house with crooked fences. Horses grazed behind lean gates. A man stepped out, broad-shouldered, wary. Elias stopped the wagon a few feet from the gate. Julieta's hands shook. Looking for two children, Elias said. Della and Drew James. The man frowned, eyeing them. Quiet kids, right? I bought them a few weeks back. Did your people come for them? Quote, They're hers, Elias said, stepping slightly forward, body steady. They belong with her. We'll pay double if needed, but they leave with us today. The man hesitated, eyes moving between Elias and Julieta. He nodded toward the shed. Thought you might come. They're in there. Julieta jumped down, heart hammering. She ran, fear and hope mingling. The shed door creaked. Inside, Della and Drew crouched on a pile of hay. Small, thin, eyes wide with uncertainty. Julieta knelt, whispering their names. Della rose slowly, tentative, then flung herself into her mother's arms. Drew clung to Julieta's side, face pressed to her skirt. Tears streamed down Julieta's cheeks. She held them as though the world could vanish around them, and they would remain safe. Elias stayed back, watching, giving them space but ready. I never thought I'd see you again, she whispered to Drew, voice shaking. Never thought I'd see both of you. He said nothing, just hugged her hand tighter. Della pressed her face into her mother's shoulder. For a moment, the world narrowed to that shed, warm and quiet, despite the dust and sweat. Elias stepped closer. They're safe now, he said. We ride together. Julieta nodded, glancing at him, her lips trembling. Thank you, she said, voice soft, nearly lost. That night, around the campfire, the children slept curled together. Julieta sat beside the flames, face lit by amber light, hands folded in her lap. Elias joined her, close but careful, not crowding her. You meant what you said, she said finally. "I did," he replied. "I never offered something I didn't mean. Not now, not ever." She nodded. "I can trust that?" "You already have," he said. His eyes held hers, steady and warm. "From the moment you took the wagon, from the moment you took your first chance, you showed grit. That counts for more than words." The fire burned low. Stars peeked through gaps in the canvas above. She felt the weight of the world ease from her shoulders, just a fraction. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life that might last. "Tomorrow," Elias said softly, "we start for San Anita. Home. Our home." Julieta rested her head against his shoulder. "I didn't think I'd ever have one." Quote, "Now you do," he said. The words held no pride, just certainty. The wagon stood quiet, horse grazing near the fire. Della and Drew slept, safe for the first time in weeks. Julieta watched the fire, thinking of the miles behind, the fear, the hunger, the desperation that had led them here. She could see the future, steady and slow, built with careful hands, and for the first time, she was ready to take it. Elias brushed a strand of hair from her face, silent, grounding her. She did not pull away. He did not speak, letting the fire and the stars fill the space between them. And somewhere in that quiet, she understood. The wagon, the road, the chance at freedom, it had all led her here. To him, to home. The morning sun broke over the hills as Elias guided the wagon down the final slope toward the homestead. Dust rose from dry patches, shimmering in the light, but the sight made Julieta's chest tighten with something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. She watched the crooked fences, the leaning roof, the small barn that groaned in the wind. It was far from perfect, but it was theirs now. Elias hopped down first, offering his hand. Julieta took it, and together they helped the children to the ground. Della's eyes widened at the sight of the house. "It's small," she whispered. Drew tugged at his mother's skirt, still unsure. Julieta knelt beside them, smoothing hair and whispering that small did not mean unimportant. "Let's get inside," Elias said. The door creaked but held as he pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of dry wood and dust, but it was warm. A small stove sat in the corner, its black iron body dull but solid. The narrow cot leaned against the wall, blankets folded unevenly. Julieta's eyes roamed, noting every gap in the boards, every loose nail. She felt the weight of responsibility settle in her chest. "Elias, we need a second cot," she said softly. "The children can share, but they'll need something firm." "I'll build it," he said, voice steady. He already measured with his hands, imagining boards and nails, the way the walls would settle after work. He never hesitated, never rushed. The calm in him made her chest ease, just a little. Outside, the land stretched golden and dry, dotted with ironwood and distant hills. The air smelled of sage. Elias checked the well, pumping water until it spilled clear into Julieta's waiting hands. "It'll hold," he said simply. She knelt and let the water run over her fingers, feeling its coolness seep into her. The land spoke, she thought, and she finally listened. By nightfall, the children slept in a nest of quilts near the hearth. Elias laid his bedroll outside, letting the shadows keep him company. Julieta lay awake, listening to the wind through the eaves, thinking of the road, the wagon, the chance she had taken. She had left fear behind, or at least left it out there, somewhere behind the hills. Before dawn, she rose to find Elias already at work, sawing boards for the cot. He glanced up and smiled like he had been expecting her. The children stirred soon after, sleepy and confused, then began helping in small ways, gathering water, sweeping dust, carrying scraps of wood. Julieta watched them, her heart full, realizing this was life again, steady and slow, built from choices rather than desperation. They worked through the morning. The cot rose solid, tested by the children with laughter and little squeals. Julieta watched Elias from the doorway, noticing the way his movements were precise, measured. He fixed what was broken the way her mother had once described, with care and pride. By afternoon, Elias showed her how to brace walls and set posts. Each splinter that tore her hands felt like proof that something real was being built. Dila drew lines in the dirt to mark where flowers might grow. Drew carried nails and rope, learning the weight of responsibility with a grin. Neighbors began to trickle in, curious and cautious. Ruth, a widow who lived down the wash, brought eggs and a quiet kindness. The children warmed to her immediately. She said the land had been waiting for someone to care for it. Julieta and Elias listened, nodding, feeling the weight of belonging settle over them. That evening, Elias strung wire fencing traded for tools, while Julieta planted the first seeds of a small garden near the house. Beans, corn, and hope pressed into the soil. The children stayed close, learning, helping, feeling safe. Night settled with firelight, shadows dancing across the walls. Julieta rested her head against Elias, feeling the rhythm of work and trust pulse through the cabin. Over the next days, they repaired the roof and fixed gaps in the walls. Elias built a solid door, with a latch the children could use from inside. When it finally closed and stayed closed, Julieta pressed her hand to the wood and felt something settle deep in her chest. The land, the house, the family. They were holding, just as they should. Rain finally came, late and gentle. Water slid from the eaves into shallow puddles around the porch. The children practiced numbers and letters on slates Elias had traded for. Drew sneezed from the dust. Della hushed him with authority. Julieta smiled, turning cornbread in the oven. Elias came in from the barn, shirt dark with sweat, hair damp. "Roof is holding," he said. Evenings fell into a rhythm. Meals cooked together, tools laid aside, stories told around low fires. Julieta mended clothes, listened, and rested her eyes on her children and Elias. For the first time, she no longer felt the sharp bite of fear in her chest. She could sleep through the night without waking at every shadow, every creak. Weeks passed. The garden grew, the barn held, and the house took on the smell of home. Elias taught the children the rhythm of the land, how to care for it, how to respect it. Julieta traded preserves for nails, cloth, and other necessities, building trust with the neighboring towns. The homestead became a quiet center of life. One evening, Ruth brought news that a preacher would pass through Patagonia soon. Julieta listened without speaking, but Elias noticed her hands still. That night, after the children slept, they sat outside under a sky thick with stars. She leaned against his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have a home," she said. "You do now," he said. No hesitation, no question. She looked out at the land stretching far beyond the horizon. "It's more than land," she said. "It's everything we've built, and we've done it together." He kissed her temples slow and sure. "Then it's ours," he said. The seasons moved on. Spring into summer, the land responded to care, sweat, and hope. Beans and corn pushed up through the soil. The smokehouse was built, the barn solid. The homestead held, anchored in steady hands and steady hearts. At night, they sat by the fire, talking of the day, of repairs, of what would come. They didn't need grand words. Small ones were enough. They spoke of fruit trees, garden fences, the way the children laughed. And when the world felt quiet enough, they held each other, steady, unafraid, home at last. The morning of the preacher's arrival came pale and quiet. The sky was a washed blue, streaked with the first light of day, and the wind carried a scent of sun-warmed earth. Julieta stirred first, careful not to wake the children. Elias was already up, sharpening tools for fence posts while the mule grazed nearby. His movements were slow and sure, as if the day itself waited for his permission to begin. The wagon rolled down the dusty road, creaking under its load, and the preacher stepped out onto the ground. He was older, with hands like worn leather and eyes that had seen 1,000 towns and more than a few broken hearts. He tipped his hat, acknowledging Elias with a nod, then turned to Julieta, his gaze gentle. "I hear you've built something strong," he said. "Not just boards and nails, but something that holds hearts, too." Julieta's cheeks warmed. She had not thought of it that way. Elias stepped to her side, hand brushing hers lightly. "It holds," he said quietly, eyes steady. "All of it." The preacher smiled and led them beneath the cottonwood near the spring, where the children had gathered baskets of wildflowers. Della's hands were serious, her face set in concentration. Drew's grin was wide, petals falling from his fingers like small pieces of joy. The children did not speak, but their presence made the air pulse with life, the homestead feeling complete in a way the roof and walls alone could not give it. The ceremony was simple. No band, no feast, no gilded chairs. The wind rustled the leaves above them, carrying the scent of sage and sun-baked dirt. Julieta wore her faded blue dress, its hem cleaned and pressed by careful hands. Elias's shirt was plain, stitched along the seams with thread that bore no color but strength. The preacher asked if they would take each other, and Julieta's answer came before he finished the question. Elias did not hesitate either. Their voices were low, steady, and certain. The wind caught the cottonwood leaves, and the land seemed to pause, listening. Ruth's nephew played a rough tune on his fiddle. The sound was uneven but joyous, a celebration of survival and choice. The children ran, chasing fireflies through the grass, their laughter ringing against the hills. Julieta's hands gripped the wildflower basket so tightly that her knuckles turned white, but she did not falter. She looked at Elias, who mirrored her steadiness. They were not heroes, not yet. They were simply together, a line drawn between past fear and a future they would shape. When the preacher pronounced them married, Elias did not step forward to take Julieta in his arms. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her fingers. Deliberate, careful, as if holding all the weight of the world. Julieta's breath caught, warmth rising to her cheeks. Outside, the small crowd of neighbors, curious and quiet, watched. Some tipped hats, others shifted uncomfortably. Nobody spoke. Hank Carter and his brother were nowhere in sight, but Julieta's heart still tightened at the thought. She had survived them before, but now they would have to reckon with something stronger. The simple act of being married, recognized and protected, changed everything. Her last name, once hers alone, now belonged to a man whose reputation carried weight, whose hand and heart would not waver. After the ceremony, they stepped into the wagon, children climbing beside them. Elias guided the horses back to the homestead, the wheels crunching against the dirt like small drumbeats of certainty. Dela leaned against him, Drew tucked under Julieta's arm. The world seemed vast and endless, but safe enough for this moment. Back at the homestead, the children ran ahead, testing doors and corners, climbing small piles of firewood. Elias followed, bringing water and supplies, his eyes always on Julieta. She moved among the chores, quiet and sure, her hands finding rhythm in the daily tasks. The barn needed reinforcement, the garden needed water, and the house needed a woman's touch to turn it from shelter into home. Evening settled slow and amber over the land. Elias and Julieta sat on the porch steps, hands entwined, watching shadows stretch over fences and hills. "I never thought I would see this," Julieta whispered, the wind catching her words. "See what?" he asked, voice low. "This. All of it. Safe, steady, ours." Elias's jaw tightened, eyes fixed on the horizon. "We earned it," he said. "Every mile, every meal, every board we drove together. It is ours because we built it." The days passed into a rhythm that carried them like a tide. Elias worked the barn, mended fences, checked the water. Julieta tended the children, baked, mended clothes, and watched over the garden. Together they traded preserves with neighbors, earned trust, and wove themselves into the quiet community without fanfare. One afternoon, Ruth rode up, carrying eggs and a small loaf of bread. She stopped short, eyes taking in the homestead. "It holds," she said simply. Dela and Drew beamed, showing her small projects, lines drawn in dirt, early vegetables sprouting. The land, the house, and the family seemed to breathe together. Julieta felt her chest settle in a way it never had before. Summer heat pressed down, and the smokehouse was built, the barn loft repaired, the fences straightened. The garden thrived with beans, squash, and corn. Every day was work, yes, but also promise. Elias taught Drew to balance weight with patience. Della learned letters and numbers, reading aloud under the firelight. Julieta traded preserves and helped neighbors, but always returned home before dusk. One night, after the children slept, Elias and Julieta sat beneath a sky heavy with stars. The night air was still, only the soft whistle of wind through dry grass. She leaned against him, speaking softly. "I never thanked you for that day, the wagon, the way you—" Her words trailed, swallowed by the quiet. "You thank me every day," he said, brushing her hair back. "By staying. By choosing." She smiled, the first true smile in weeks. "I almost forgot the words that started it all." "Which ones?" "The last name," she whispered. He took her hand, rough and steady, lacing fingers with hers. "I never stopped being grateful you took it." They sat silent, the world around them calm. The homestead hummed quietly, the children slept soundly, and the land held. Years later, travelers would tell stories of the woman who tried to rob a wagon and found a home instead. Julieta never corrected them. Elias never stopped smiling. Their roads stretched past the horizon, but the homestead had anchored them. And every night, when the lantern dimmed and the house settled, Julieta lay beside Elias, feeling the quiet strength of a life built not from luck, but from choice. The first light of dawn spilled across the homestead like a gentle promise. Julieta rose before the children, brushing her hair and stretching beneath the soft warmth of the sun. Elias was already outside, checking the fences and water troughs, hands steady and sure. The garden smelled of earth and sweat, and the barn stood firm against the wide open sky. She stepped into the warmth and breathed it in, the steady, hard-earned life they had built. The children stirred soon after, their small voices calling to each other across the yard. Della tugged at Julieta's skirt, pulling her toward the chicken coop. Drew trailed behind, carrying a basket of eggs he had collected with careful hands. Elias watched them from the barn, a faint smile playing across his face. He wiped his brow, then returned to straightening a sagging post, hammering slowly, rhythmically. The land itself seemed to bend around the work, alive with the promise of things growing and lasting. Breakfast was quiet but full. Julieta set plates of hot cornbread and beans on the table, and the children ate hungrily, their laughter bubbling between bites. Elias poured coffee for Julieta, hands brushing briefly, fingers lingering in a way that made her pulse quicken. She met his eyes, and they shared a look that needed no words, the understanding that came from every shared struggle, every mile, every meal, every small victory. After the dishes were cleared, Elias brought a bundle of tools to Julieta. "We'll start on the new fence line today," he said. "The garden needs protection, and the livestock can't roam too far." She nodded, taking the hammer and nails, her hands already remembering the rhythm of work. The children ran ahead, dragging small tools, gathering posts, helping in ways that made them feel grown up, but kept their laughter bright and light. The day stretched long and golden, the sun dipping low and casting the homestead in amber. By the time the shadows grew long, the new fence stood straight and true, a line drawn between the past and the life they were claiming for themselves. That evening, as the sky turned violet and orange, Elias and Julieta sat on the porch steps, watching the children chase fireflies in the tall grass. Della held Drew's hand as they ran, their small feet kicking up dust, their laughter echoing across the land. Elias leaned back against the post, his eyes on Julieta, taking in the way the light caught her hair and the quiet strength she radiated. She rested her head against his shoulder, her fingers brushing his, and together they watched the homestead breathe. "I never imagined this," she said softly. "I never thought I could stay in one place, feel safe, feel like it belonged to me." "You earned it," he replied, voice low but steady. "Every choice you made, Every hardship you endured, it brought us here. We made it together." The months rolled on like gentle waves, carrying each season in turn. Spring brought green shoots and the promise of rain. Summer stretched long and golden, with heat shimmering over the fields. The garden grew, bursting with beans, corn, squash, and tomatoes. Elias repaired the barn loft, reinforced the well, and straightened fences. Julieta mended clothes, tended the children, and tended the earth, her hands calloused but steady, her heart full. The children thrived. Della learned to read and write with confidence, her voice strong as she practiced aloud by the fire. Drew followed Elias everywhere, dragging boards, lifting tools, learning the weight of work alongside the rhythm of care. Each night, Julieta and Elias sat together on the porch, hands intertwined, watching stars settle into the sky like quiet guardians. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of earth, of home, and of safety. One afternoon, a neighbor rode up, a widow named Ruth, who had often offered quiet help and friendship. She stopped short, taking in the homestead, the garden, the children at play. "It holds," she said, voice soft. "This place, it holds everything you've put into it." Quote. Julieta nodded, a warmth spreading through her chest. She watched her children laugh, safe and free, and felt the weight of fear that had once lived there lift, replaced by steady pride. Elias stood beside her, strong and quiet, a hand brushing hers in gentle reassurance. Winter came again, cold and silent, but the homestead was ready. Quilts trapped the chill, the fire burned steady, and the walls had grown thick with work and care. The children learned to laugh at their own fogging breath, and Elias told stories by the firelight, making the long nights feel like a gift rather than a trial. Spring returned with green hills and the scent of rain. Elias and Julieta planned for the future, an extra room, a smokehouse, fruit trees near the wash. They did not rush. Every decision, every nail, every seed planted was chosen with patience and hope. They had learned that the slow, steady work of care was stronger than fear, more enduring than anger, and more binding than words. One evening, Julieta stood at the edge of the property, watching Dilla help Drew practice reading signs Elias had carved into the fence posts. She felt a deep, steady certainty settle in her chest. Not excitement, not fear, but the knowledge that they had built a life together, a life worth defending, a life they would not abandon. Elias joined her, wiping his hands on his trousers, the sun behind him burning gold across the land. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "How a name can change a life," she said. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes a name is more than a word. Sometimes it's an invitation." That night, after the children slept, they sat beneath the vast sky thick with stars. Julieta leaned against his shoulder. "I never thanked you," she whispered, "for the wagon, for everything." "You thanked me every day," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "by staying, by choosing to be here." She laughed softly. "I almost forgot the words that started it all." "Which ones?" "The last name," she whispered. He held her hand, rough and sure. "I never stopped being grateful you took it." They sat in quiet, the fire low, the land holding them like a secret. The seasons shifted without asking permission. Spring became summer, summer gave way to fall, and the homestead thrived under their care. The children grew strong, the garden flourished, and neighbors came and went, trusting the home that had been built not from luck, but from choice. Years later, travelers sometimes stopped by, speaking of the woman who had once tried to rob a wagon and found a home instead. Julieta never corrected them. Elias only smiled. Their road stretched on beyond the horizon, but the homestead had anchored them. Every night, when the lantern dimmed and the house settled, Julieta lay beside Elias and felt the quiet strength of a life built on trust, courage, and love. If this story moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more emotional Wild West stories that touch the heart.